Okay, Saturday, April 2nd. So last few days we had some air alarms, but nothing major happened in Lviv since the oil storage tanks got hit and I think some industrial building was hit, but nothing that I heard of. I mean, I'm hearing stories that there was some kind of factory explosion, but it wasn't attributed to any military action from Russia. It was just an accident. But we had several air raid sirens over the past couple days. Um, it hasn't been too dramatic here, and I know that in the news there's a lot going on. That the Russians are repositioning themselves. It's not a withdrawal. It's not a ceasefire. It's just a repositioning so they can focus on the east and the south, the area around the Azov Sea. But there's plenty in the papers about that. So what I want to talk about is my thoughts about inflation. Inflation now we're getting a lot of that because, the supply is down while the demand stays the same. So the price of things are going up, gas and food and what have you. But there's a silver lining to inflation. It's also a driver of innovation. It helps us look at ways to use the scarce resources better. For example, when oil prices went up in the 70s, they rolled out more fuel-efficient cars and started looking for alternatives. And there was a lot of innovation in the internal combustion engine. The horsepower actually went up for the given fuel economy. So using the same amount of fuel, they got a lot more horsepower. If you look at the old cars from the 70s and 80s, they used a lot more fuel and they weren't as fast. So it was both faster, better, and cheaper now to run cars than they were back then. So maybe this wave of inflation will drive some innovation as well. But on the food inflation front, this is now my perspective in America. Average American eats around 3,400 calories a day. I Googled this, and I think the average need is around 2,000 calories a day, somewhere between 1,600 and 2,400, depending on age, gender, level of physical activity, etc., etc. But let's say 2,000. So Americans are eating 50% more than what's needed. So if they went from 3,000 down to 2,000 calories a day, reduce their food intake by 33%, let's say they start buying 1/3 less food because prices, shot up or something. This might actually have some good effects. I mean, nobody is starving in America because of lack of food. It would be because of lack of distribution or lack of logistics or something, or malnutrition. I wouldn't say there's starvation in America. I would say there's malnutrition, people eating macaroni and cheese. But let's say that people started, reducing their purchase of expensive processed foods and bought, vegetables and, falafels instead of meat and, chickpeas as a source of protein or something instead of like beef. You'd actually see Americans drop a lot of weight and become healthier. And the use of the healthcare system and everything would gradually drop. Diabetes would drop, if they made sugar expensive in America, and people would start walking more instead of driving every 2 blocks or something and take those short walks. And there might be some macro effect to see the overall population get healthier. In America, before the age of processed foods, the obesity rates were much lower. When food was expensive in America, in the 1950s and 60s, it was considerably more expensive than it is now compared to the income. And Americans were a lot healthier. They were making a lot more choices. They weren't bringing cheeseburgers home and ordering pizza all the time. Like it's $8, $9 to get a pizza, and McDonald's, they have a dollar menu or something, and unlimited big gulps. So if all this stuff became expensive, you'd actually see a lot of the healthcare issues in America get solved. I read somewhere, it's Google also, that I think top 10 health issues in America, it's something like, related to diabetes. All 9 out of 10 of the problems are related to being overweight. Even probably the depression is in one of those top 10 diagnostics. So you have skin problems, diabetes, you have high blood pressure. So all of this has some correlation to diet. So if we saw an overall improvement in Americans' health, it would stimulate the economy. People would be more productive and more happy and more attractive to each other or whatever. And I think so. Like I said, I see the silver lining to this. Americans do have to eat a lot less. They do have to eat a lot less, and they will be eating a lot less. But I don't think they'll be starving to death. They'll just have to make better food choices like the rest of us in the world. Like here in Ukraine, we eat a lot of vegetables, a lot of potatoes. We're eating meat not so often. Like I said in a previous video, I'm 85% vegan, so it's only 3 meals a week are some sort of meat, eggs, or fish, and the rest is like vegetables and beans and rice. It's a bit boring, but you lose a lot of weight and you feel good, and most of all, it's cheap. It's saves a lot of money. So I think if America started eating like Ukraine, they would look like Ukrainians. I don't know if you've ever been here, but people look pretty good. It's like where I used to live in Norway. Norwegians are also pretty healthy, and food is relatively expensive, but you end up choosing the right things. So you choose the fruits and the vegetables, and you stay away from the cereals in the box. All these foods that are in like a box or been processed heavily and stuff, those prices are going to go up because there's a lot of inputs of labor and fuel costs, and for transportation and sugar and compliance go into that. So that's actually a good thing. We as people need to get off of the processed foods and go back to eating the way we did like 50 years ago. So yeah, that's my opinion about inflation, is that it'll be a driver of innovation, it'll be a driver of good health, and it's not all bad, especially if you're supporting a free democratic country, through your, changing your habits, using less fuel and, anything, like I was just saying a minute ago, the making of processed foods is a chemical intensive industry, and those chemicals and everything, a lot of them are based on petrol products or require energy. So the less energy we can use, the less that feeds the Russians. So we have to change everything we do and kind of revert back to when things were good in America. Everyone talks about the good old 40s and 50s, even though there was segregation and discrimination, all these things. But the health, from a health aspect and a work-life balance aspect, things were good. And we have to look back at that time, take more pleasure in sports and, physical activities instead of just driving around everywhere, and use the bus and the train more. And it's social, you get to meet people and talk to people. It's not all that great to be in a car by yourself all the time. So we might have to look at the way we live and redesign cities, because it's going to take a good 10-20 years to shift this whole dependence off of Russia and China and countries hostile towards Western civilization. This is like a real macroscopic change we have to think about. So anyway, that's all I got today. Going to the city center. Follow my new Instagram project, tractors_and_tanks, tractors and tanks. I think if you search it up on Instagram, you'll find it, or just go visit the website, tractorsandtanks.com. We're going to be developing NFTs and make this a fundraiser for the Ukrainian army. And if we can get a hold of someone in the Kharkiv tractor factory, which was burned down, maybe make it a fundraiser for them as well. Because I really believe in that Ukrainian agricultural infrastructure needs to be restored. This is, like I said, if the Russians succeed, they will have leverage, in the world with both energy and food. They can leverage Africa and Asia with food, and they can leverage India with energy. And that'll change and upset the whole balance that we have. And there definitely will be this definitely would not be good for Western civilization. So yeah, think about the things I said. I'd like to read your comments, and I'll reply to you in the videos. So I definitely like to have challenging conversations. Anyway, take care. Bye.